My name is Olivia. I am 24 years old and I live in New York. From the outside, my life probably looks like a movie. A young woman living in a bustling city, juggling her job at a boutique PR firm, meeting friends for coffee, walking through Central Park in the fall with leaves crunching under her boots. But what people don't see is the quiet side of me, the one that still holds on to memories from the past like they're pressed flowers in a journal. Some days I feel like I'm still the 18-year-old girl who fell in love for the first time, completely, helplessly, and without a clue what that love would later cost me. I was born and raised in Queens, one of the quieter parts of New York, where people still smile at each other in passing and the local grocery store owner knows your name. My family lived in a modest apartment on the third floor of a brick building with a view of the streetlight, and I remember sitting by the window, late at night, writing in my journal or sketching random thoughts that ran through my head. I wasn't popular or particularly bold growing up. I was the girl who read books during lunch, who helped teachers after class, who had dreams far bigger than her small neighborhood. My parents were good people, hardworking, strict in their own way, but loving. My dad was a mechanic, and my mom worked part-time at a local bakery. They didn't always have time to sit down and talk about feelings, but they made sure I had everything I needed. I had one younger brother, Ryan, who was always getting into something. He was loud where I was quiet, wild where I was cautious. We fought like all siblings do, but he was my best friend in ways I didn't even realize until much later in life. The time I turned 18, I had just graduated high school. The world felt like it was cracking open at the edges, inviting me to step out and explore. I had dreams of going to NYU for communications, and I spent that summer before college, working part-time at a bookstore while trying to figure out who I really was. It was one of those strange in-between periods where you're not quite a teenager, but not really an adult either. I was craving something new, something exciting, something that felt like the beginning of a story. That's when Daniel showed up. He arrived one evening with his aunt, who lived next door. I still remember that day so clearly. The golden haze of the sunset, the hum of cicadas, the way he stepped out of the car in ripped jeans and a faded band tee, looking like he belonged in a movie. Daniel was my neighbor's nephew, visiting from California for the summer. His mother had sent him to stay with her sister in New York, hoping a change of scenery would help him refocus after a rough year. I didn't know the details then, but I later found out he'd been struggling with depression after losing his father. He was quiet too, in his own way. But there was something about him that drew people in. Our first meeting was awkward. I was carrying a bag of groceries up the stairs, and he offered to help. We talked briefly about the weather, the city, his first impressions. He had this calm, unhurried way of speaking, like he wasn't afraid of silences. I liked that. Most people in New York were always in a rush, always talking over one another, always pushing past. But Daniel? He listened. He looked you in the eye when you spoke. It was disarming. Over the next few days, I found myself running into him more and more. Sometimes on the front steps of our building, sometimes at the corner store, once at the park. Every time we talked a little more. He told me about life in San Diego, the beach, the skate parks, the friends he left behind. I told him about my dreams of becoming a writer, my love for poetry, how I wanted to move out of Queens someday and do something that mattered. There was a slowness to our growing connection that felt different from anything I had ever known. We didn't rush. We didn't flirt in the loud, obvious way my friends at school did. It was subtle, a brush of the arm, a laugh at the same moment, long silences that didn't feel uncomfortable. I started looking for excuses to be outside. When he was around, I began noticing little things: how his hair curled at the ends, how his fingers always twitched when he was thinking, how his eyes darkened when he talked about his dad. One night, we sat on the roof of our building, staring at the stars. The city lights muted most of them, but a few still glimmered in the sky like secrets. I remember telling him that I felt stuck sometimes, like I was waiting for my real life to begin. He looked at me, his expression unreadable, and said, "Maybe it already has." I didn't know what to make of that at the time. But now, looking back, I think that was the first moment I truly fell for him. The rest of the summer unfolded like a dream. We went on walks, explored hidden corners of the city, shared secrets we hadn't told anyone else. He showed me his sketchbook, pages full of abstract drawings, dark and beautiful. I showed him my poems, raw, unpolished, emotional. We were two people trying to make sense of our lives, finding comfort in each other's confusion. He never tried to kiss me, never made a move. I kept waiting for it, wondering if he felt the same way. But something told me he did. It was in the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The way he remembered everything I said. The way he always said goodnight like he didn't really want to say goodbye. I remember the day he told me he was leaving. It was a week before college started. We were sitting on a bench near the East River, the water glittering beneath the fading sun. He said his mom had booked his flight back to California. He would be gone by Friday. I didn't cry, not then. I nodded, tried to smile, said something dumb like, "That's great. Your mom must miss you." But inside, I felt like something was being ripped out of me. That night, he came to my apartment door with a small envelope. "Open it later," he said. "Not now." I watched him walk away, his figure growing smaller with each step. I stood in that doorway for a long time, holding the envelope like it was made of glass. I opened it that night, after everyone had gone to bed. Inside was a letter. It said things I wasn't ready to hear. That he had feelings for me. That I was the first person in a long time who made him feel alive again. That he didn't know what the future held, but he would never forget this summer. Or me. I cried quietly into my pillow, knowing nothing would be the same again. That was 6 years ago. Since then, life has moved on. I went to college. I got my degree. I found a job, made new friends, even dated a few people. But no one ever made me feel the way Daniel did. No one ever understood me the way he did. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if he stayed. If we had tried long distance. If I had told him how I felt before he left. Sometimes, I wonder if he still thinks about me. Because the truth is, I still think about him. Especially when the seasons change. Especially when I'm walking alone through the city at dusk, and the air feels heavy with memories. But love doesn't always go the way we dream it will. It's strange how memories work. One moment, I'm sitting at my desk in a midtown office surrounded by clacking keyboards and the constant buzz of deadlines, and the next, a random song on the radio or the smell of rain on pavement transports. Me right back to that summer, back to Daniel. Time has a way of softening the edges of our memories, making the painful parts less sharp. But some moments, they stay vivid, almost too clear, like a cut that never truly heals. After Daniel left, life didn't just pause. It kept moving, even when I felt stuck. My first few weeks at NYU were a blur. New classes, new faces, new expectations. I remember sitting in a crowded lecture hall, surrounded by hundreds of strangers, feeling more alone than I ever had. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was him, and sometimes it was. At first, Daniel texted me almost every day. We'd send little updates, jokes, and songs we thought the other would like. He sent me photos of the Pacific Ocean at sunset. I sent him pictures of the city skyline at night. We were still holding on, still trying. But texting isn't the same as being there. And slowly, the messages started to space out. A day between replies turned into 2. Then a week. Then silence. I told myself he was busy. That college had swept him up just like it had done to me. But the truth was heavier than that. We were both living new lives, in new places, with new people. And even though I still thought of him constantly, I had no idea if he thought of me at all. I tried to distract myself. I threw myself into my studies, joined a writing club, started exploring parts of the city I'd never seen before. I dated occasionally, but no one seemed to get me, not the way he did. One guy, Jake, was charming and smart, but I felt like I was performing around him, trying to be someone he'd like instead of just being myself. Another guy, Marcus, was kind and attentive, but every time he leaned in to kiss me, I found myself imagining Daniel's eyes instead. That's the thing about first love. It leaves an imprint so deep that even years later, your heart still remembers the exact way it felt to love that hard, that fully, that innocently. By the time I was 20, I had almost convinced myself to let it go. Daniel had become a memory. One I cherished but no longer clung to. Until one evening, completely out of the blue, I got a message from him. "Hey, Liv, I'm in New York for a week. Want to catch up?" My heart practically stopped. I stared at the screen, reading and rereading the message, wondering if it was real. It had been nearly 2 years since we last spoke. What was he doing here? Why now? I typed back a quick reply, cool, casual, as if I wasn't internally panicking. We agreed to meet the next evening at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, not far from where I was living. The entire day leading up to that reunion, I was a mess. I changed outfits 3 times. I kept imagining what he'd look like now. Taller? More? Mature? Would he still have that same easy smile? That same quiet presence that made me feel like I was the only person in the world when he looked at me? When I walked into the coffee shop, he was already there, sitting by the window with a cup in hand. He looked up and smiled, and in that moment, it was like no time had passed at all. He had grown into himself. His jawline was sharper, his hair a little longer, a bit of stubble along his chin. But his eyes, they were exactly the same. Warm, familiar, safe. "Hey, Liv," he said, standing up. "Hey, Daniel," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. We talked for hours. About everything and nothing. He told me about life in San Diego, how he'd changed majors twice, how he still sketched sometimes but hadn't picked up a pencil in months. I told him about the agency I was interning at, how New York felt too big some days, how I still wrote late at night when I couldn't sleep. There was a moment, just a flicker, when our hands brushed on the table and neither of us pulled away. Later, as we walked through the chilly streets under glowing lamplight, he turned to me and said, "I've missed this. I've missed you." I didn't know what to say, because I had missed him too, desperately. but hearing it aloud made the ache feel new again. We ended the night with a long hug, and I watched him disappear into a cab, my heart thudding so loudly. I was sure the whole street could hear it. The next few days were a whirlwind. We met up again, then again. Coffee dates turned into dinners. Dinners turned into late-night walks. There was a rhythm to us that picked up right where we left off, like our connection had simply been waiting in the wings all this time. He started, calling me Liv again. No one else ever did. Then, one night, he kissed me. It happened slowly, softly. We were sitting in the back garden of a quiet bar, the city's noise dulled by ivy-covered walls and twinkling lights overhead. We were talking about childhood, about how his dad used to take him surfing every Sunday morning before church. His voice cracked just slightly, and I reached out to take his hand. He looked at me like he did that summer, like I was sunlight and breath and everything good in the world. "I never stopped thinking about you," he whispered. Then his lips touched mine. It felt like coming home. The next morning, I woke up believing we had a second chance. That life had brought us back together for a reason. That maybe, just maybe, first love wasn't meant to stay in the past. But love doesn't always go the way we dream it will. The cracks started to show quickly. Daniel had a life back in California. Friends, family, commitments. He was only in New York for a week, 10 days at most. He hadn't come here for me. He was visiting for a photography exhibit his cousin was involved in. His return flight was already booked. I asked him if he would consider staying longer. He smiled, kissed my forehead and said maybe someday. Someday. The most dangerous word in love. Still, I hoped. When he flew back, we promised to talk every day. And we did, for a while. We FaceTimed. We sent playlists. We even started planning a visit. But the distance began to feel heavier than ever. He got busy. I got impatient. The texts came less frequently. The calls got shorter. I started to feel like I was begging for attention from someone who had already left me twice. Then, one day, I saw it. A photo on Instagram. Daniel, smiling. Holding hands with a girl on the beach. My stomach dropped. I stared at the image, then scrolled. More photos, more tags. Her name was Elise. She was a photography student. Gorgeous, confident, and clearly more than just a friend. When I confronted him, his reply was cold, too polished, too rehearsed. She and I started talking before I came to New York, he said. I didn't expect things with you to, I don't know. I thought we were just reconnecting as friends. Friends. That word shattered something inside me. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to throw every memory back in his face. But instead, I just stood there, numb, phone in hand, heart breaking quietly beneath my ribs. That night, I cried like I hadn't in years. Not just because he had moved on, but because I hadn't. I had held on to our story like it was sacred, believing it was unfinished. I thought first love meant forever love. But I was wrong. Love, real love, isn't always fair. It doesn't always stay. Sometimes it leaves you with unanswered questions and empty promises. Sometimes it ends without closure, and that's the hardest part. In the weeks that followed, I went through the motions: work, sleep, repeat. I avoided songs that reminded me of him. I unfollowed his account. I tried to erase him from my digital life even though he still haunted every quiet moment. But slowly, Painfully, I began to let go. I started writing again, pouring every ache, every memory, every unanswered question onto the page. I joined a new poetry group. I reconnected with old friends. I began finding beauty in little things again. The way sunlight hit my coffee cup in the morning, the rustle of trees in Central Park, the sound of my brother's laugh when he visited from college. I realized that Daniel wasn't the ending of my story. He was a chapter, a beautiful, messy, unforgettable chapter, but not the whole book. First love is powerful. It teaches you how to feel, how to give, how to break. But it also teaches you how to survive, how to grow, how to move forward. And that's exactly what I did. Because love doesn't always go the way we dream it will, but sometimes the detours lead us exactly where we're meant to be.